It is the middle of the night, and I've just found a short story that I would love to share. I'm reading Folktales from India by A.K. Ramanujan, and it's a collection of tales from across the country in 22 different languages. And the one we'll be reading today is from Urdu. The title is A Tall Tale in Urdu. A tall tale in Urdu. There were 3 tanks on the point of a thorn. Of these, 2 were dry and the third had no water. In the one that had no water, 3 potters settled down. Of these 3 potters, 2 had no hands and the third was handless. The handless potter made 3 pots. Of these, 2 were broken and the third had no bottom. In the last, they cooked 3 grains of rice. 2 turned out raw and the third was uncooked. They invited 3 guests to eat the 1 uncooked grain of rice. Of the 3 guests, 2 were angry and the third could not be calmed down. The third guest, who could not be calmed down, was given 3 blows with a shoe. 2 blows missed him and the third did not hit him. To avoid getting beaten with a shoe, the guest fled and the host pursued him. On his way, a wild elephant attacked the host. He struck the wild elephant with his fist and broke 2 ribs and a half of the elephant. The wounded elephant fled and the host chased it. The elephant ran up a tree and crawled from branch to branch and from leaf to leaf. At last, the elephant jumped down from the tree and saw a spouted cup, got into it by the way of the mouth and came out through the spout. The body of the elephant got through all right, but the tail got stuck. The man who was attacking didn't want to kill such a helpless brute and went his way. Then he saw a little girl lift the carcass of the elephant on a straw and ask her mother where she should throw it. "It's only a little mouse," said the girl. The man who was watching this said to himself, "How powerful must be the father of such a girl?" So he asked her where her father was. She said, "He is away in the jungle, grazing the oxen of 70,000 treasure carts, all tied up in a string that he carries around his waist." The man went to the jungle and saw the girl's father, with 70,000 treasure carts tied around his waist. He went up to him and challenged him to combat. "All right," said the father of the girl, "but we are alone here and we'll never agree who is the winner. Let's find a third man to act as an umpire." Just then they saw an old woman with a bent back passing by. She had some food in one hand and a pitcher of water in the other. They spoke to her and asked her to act as umpire. "Oh, my sons, an old woman like me is not fit for such a job. But I have a grown-up son, not very far from here. He would be a better person to judge because he carries about, tied to his waist, a string of 70,000 camels." The combatants agreed. The old woman put the bundle of food on top of the pitcher, which she placed on her head, and invited one of the men to sit on each of her hands. The man with the 70,000 cards tied them carefully around his waist and sat on one of the old woman's hands. His opponent sat on the other. Now the old woman, when she was angry, used to threaten her son and say she would hand him over to the Khasi's bailiff. The son saw her coming from a distance and saw 2 men perched on her hands. He concluded that these were the Khasi's men, and so he spread his sheet on the ground and quickly tied his 70,000 camels in it and took to his heels. The neck of some of the camels stuck out of the bundle and one of them had its tongue out of its mouth. A kite, thinking it was a piece of meat, came swooping down and flew away with the bundle. It was too heavy and by the bird had to drop it. It so happened that the queen was walking on the roof of her palace and she chanced to look up just at that time and the bundle fell into her eye. She felt pain in her eye, so she called for the midwife. The midwife examined the queen's eye and, to her surprise, saw 70,000 camels walking about inside. She seized the camels one by one and hid some of them in her pockets and some in the folds of her dress. The queen was no longer in distress, and the midwife hurried home in delight and counted all the animals, but found only 69,999. The midwife was convinced that there had been 70,000 camels and that she must have left one in the queen's eye. So she hurried back to the palace and examined the queen's eye, but couldn't find the missing camel. So she searched the gram field through which she had passed, but could find no trace of the camel and gave up the search. One day, she made some fulkis or small cakes of gram flour, and when she tore open the first one that was ready, she found the camel inside, minus its head and neck. "Where have you been all this time?" asked the midwife. "I'm here," said the camel, "but my neck and head are at Agra, and they will come to you in due time." Now the king of Agra had made a lovely garden, and for a time it was found that some animal ate of the plants every night. He ordered a search, but the animal could not be found. At last, the king ordered the Wazir himself to keep guard. The Wazir did so. He cut his little finger and put salt and pepper in the wound so that the pain would keep him awake. At midnight, he saw the neck of the camel appear and eat the plants. The Wazir quickly ran up and caught the neck and asked who it was. "Never mind who I am," said the camel's neck, "but take this and do as I tell you." The neck gave him a seed and said, "Take this to the king, sow it before him in the first ghari, the first half hour of the day. It will germinate in the second ghari, grow in the third, flower in the fourth, bear fruit in the fifth, ripen in the sixth, and the fruit will be eaten by the king in the seventh." The Wazir did as the camel's neck directed, and the seed was planted, and 7 gharis later, a ripe watermelon was placed before the king. At that moment, some astrologers were announced. They informed the king that a tremendous rainstorm was approaching, and that unless the king and his people took refuge in a safe place, all of them would be killed. They were alarmed, but the astrologers saw the watermelon and cried out in chorus, "This is the very thing!" So they advised the insides be scooped out and everyone should enter it. So the king and his people and all their goods and cattle went into the watermelon, and the two halves shut together when all were in. Soon the rain came down in torrents, and it rained for days, and all the land was flooded, and the watermelon with the king and his people floated on the water. After the storm was over, a big fish was very hungry, saw the melon and devoured it. But the melon was so big, it stuck in the fish's throat. So the fish came out, lay gasping on the bank, when a crane that had eaten nothing for days ate the fish. But it would not go down. The crane fell down exhausted and was soon devoured by a cat, which too could not move, and was eaten by a dog, which also lay down unable to leave the place. Now there was a khanjar, a wandering gypsy, whose wife was pestering him to go and get something for the family to eat. "Don't nag me," he used to say. "One of these days I'll find you food enough to last 4 days. So he went out to hunt on the day the dog had swallowed the cat. He found the dog half dead and killed it with one blow of his bludgeon and took it home in delight. His wife cut open the dog and cried out, "Why, husband dear, there's a cat inside the dog." "Didn't I tell you I would bring 4 days' food? Keep the cat for tomorrow." Next day she cut open the cat and found the crane, and she told her husband, who said, "Keep the crane for tomorrow." Next day she cut open the crane and found the fish, and the next day she cut open the fish and found the watermelon. At the end of it all, when she cut open the watermelon, out came the king and his people and their cattle and horses and all their goods. And the king gave the gypsy a piece of land rent-free and lots of money and went back to his kingdom. And that is a tall tale in Urdu.